Welcome back. You're watching NewsX. My name is Vineet. Union Home Minister Amit Shah prepares to table the FCRA Amendment Bill in what could be one of the biggest legislative flashpoints of this monsoon season and session. The bill, first introduced back in March, seeks to overhaul the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act of 2010, with the government calling it a landmark push for greater transparency and accountability in how foreign funds enter the country. Among its key provisions, a new designated authority to seize and dispose of assets of NGOs whose licenses lapse, and a reduction in penalty terms from 5 years to 1. Well, before we open this conversation with our guests, let's take a look at the big developments in the FCRA bill, the math and the difference between the old and the new bill, and then of course we get into a conversation with our guests on the panel right here on NewsX this evening. FCRA Bill 2026. The big move: organization ceases to have FCRA certificate if cancelled by the government. A lot of our licenses, as you remember, were cancelled in the last few years. A lot of them took it to court as well. Big move number 2 creates designated authority for management and disposal of foreign contribution and assets which the government felt was being misused and was also anti-state. Maximum penalty for violation reduced from 5 years to 1 year, which is of course a kind of a let up for a lot of these NGOs. The cessation of FCRA certificate will lead to loss of assets as well. So this is of course a big motivation for these NGOs to keep the FCRA, and the organization cannot exit FCRA and the framework without losing its assets as well. Big move number 6: assets can be transferred to ministries, departments, authorities, state of center authorities as well, and entities not registered with center with FCRA certificate must obtain prior permission to operate under this license. These are some of the big moves, and of course assets created only partially by foreign contribution will also be subject to vesting as well. This is obviously a big announcement. There's assets which have been bought by this money is obviously going to be under scrutiny, and the government can take them. India's FCRA math: registration active at this point in time 14,437, cancelled, which happened over the last 12 years, is 22,496, expired somewhere close to 15,000. Foreign contributors from 2019 to 2020, 16,000 crores to almost 19,000 crores. So it's not that the contribution has come down, it's only gone up, regardless of the fact that a lot of these licenses were cancelled and some of them expired. Before, license expiry led to retention of foreign funds, allowed registration for religious work without limitation, bars foreign contribution from funding religious conversions as well. That's been one of the biggest relief for the government to in fact look into FCRA, because a lot of times allegations were made that conversions were happening, foreign money was being diverted to misalign this contribution that was coming from offshore countries. Ambassador Bhaspati Mukherjee, former diplomat, with us on the program. Advocate Adish Agarwala, senior lawyer of the Supreme Court, also joins us. Dr. Sharat Kohli, senior economist, joins us on this forum as well. Advocate Shaji Varghese, president of the Christian Seva Sangh, joins us on the program as well. Ambassador Bhaspati Mukherjee, well, we all know what has been wrong with the FCRA. Time and again the government has alleged that these funds are not meant for the reason that they are transferred or utilized. They have been used in activities which have, for the lack of a better word, destroyed the constitutional integrity of the country.
Well, Vineet, as usual, you put it better than I could. So congratulations. I completely agree that there is need to control the FCRA because it is being used by sinister forces outside India, external forces, aligned with sinister internal forces to bring about changes in India which are not part of India's secular democratic constitution. As a simple example, for instance, there were a lot of conversions which happened in the past because some parts of India lacked development for decades due to colonialism, its after effects, etc., etc. And conversions were done, I'm sorry to say, for purely economic reasons, promising those who are being converted a better deal. That is not the reason for conversion. A conversion should happen if the individual concerned believes that the religion to which he is born into does not give him the spiritual satisfaction as the religion into which he wishes to convert. That is particularly important, beneath, for those of us who come, like I do, from Sanatan Dharma, Hinduism, which does not believe in conversion at all. There was, in fact, no conversion mechanism to become a Hindu until the Arya Samaj came into existence. You are born a Hindu, you die a Hindu. It was as simple as that. So, the FCRA needs to be amended so that sinister forces do not also exploit innocent people in India to bring about changes which are against India's constitution. I would also like to add that quite apart from the conversion issue, the FCRA earlier has been used to try to bring about regime change in India. I don't want to go any further because that is not the topic of today's debate and I intend to write about it. But there is no doubt that sinister forces outside India, in coalition with internal forces who are either fully aware or innocent, are party to a system by which regime change is thought to be brought about against the wishes of the people of India, because the government of India at present is constituted according to popular vote, secret ballot, and the wishes of the people of India. Thank you, Vineet.
You're quite right, ma'am. Dr. Kohli, what is your assessment of the situation? Have there been loopholes that have been exploited through the FCRA in the country? Have some of these loopholes, Dr. Kohli, been used for anti-state activity? Also, last question, sir, have some of these bona fide and genuine NGOs also suffered as a result some of these bad apples?
Good evening, Vineet, to you, my fellow panelists and the viewers. Yes, the answer to all your questions in one word would be yes. But the answer may not be as simple as that. It does need to be thrown light upon. Let's understand the mechanics of how this goes. So there is a foreign entity who remits money to the NGO here, assuming that the NGO has taken the permission from the Home Ministry and duly registered under the FCRA. So the mechanics goes like this, that the funds are remitted. The funds land in the bank account of the NGO here. The bank issues an FIRC, it's called the Foreign Inward Remittance Certificate. From there, the fund is used for the specified purpose. Now, this is what happens. Let me first take out the biggest amendment which is going to take place. So it is then found by the Home Ministry, for example, that the funds are being used for sinister purposes, okay? So what Home Ministry does is to suspend, cancel, or the license expires, the registration expires. So until now, that is before the registration happened, what was happening was that the asset created out of those funds was beyond the purview. That once the funds have come, you can suspend the registration. The registration can expire, it can be cancelled, but the way money has been used to create an asset, that asset remained with the organization. Now, that for me is the biggest amendment which is going to happen. And, apart from this, now what were the reasons? The funds coming in were diverted for personal purposes of the office bearers. These are some of the cases because my firm does handle FCRA cases and registrations. So I'm quite aware of how this goes. And the biggest problem, the purpose for which the funds came, the funds were used for purposes beyond that. That is, it was used for other purposes. Another misuse, the funds were transferred to unregistered organization. Of course, there was an amendment done in 2020. So this has not been seen as often because you have to submit. Now, to understand beneath this better, that under what name can you bring funds into India? You can bring funds in a company which is called an FDI, foreign direct investment. You can bring funds as part of your revenue. That is where a company is earning revenue or an organization is earning revenue from abroad. The third and the only other method is that an organization in India can borrow. Now, apart from these three purposes, FCRA is the only alternate left. So when a company finds or when an organization finds it cannot use any of these three, it resorts to FRA. So diverting the funds for purposes beyond the purposes declared in registration was a big issue. So that, of course, I mean, the mathematics which you read, Vineet, just now, about the number of registrations cancelled, the number of registrations suspended, the number of registrations expired, most of them have been because of these reasons that they were diverted for purposes other than the purposes declared. But the biggest problem that was being faced by the current regulation is that the assets created remained with the organization, although the license was suspended. So for me, the biggest takeaway is that now government will have power. If this gets passed on Monday when it's presented or whenever, the asset will then become the property of the state. The government would have the right to confiscate that asset and it becomes state's asset. So I think this was a huge loophole for me, which I've been observing for a very long time. In fact, a few years ago, I did observe that. I would not like to name the NGO here, where I found that the asset was created. And of course, I agree with Ambassador Mukherjee, funds being used for conversion, funds being used for terrorist activities, funds being used for entire national activities. That problem, of course, was perennial, which Home Ministry kept a very close eye on, Vineet.
Let me also bring in Advocate Verghese into this conversation. Advocate Verghese, what are you most concerned about here? The regulation is going to streamline a few things, but is there a part of this legislation and this entire process which may also look a little stringent when it comes to the working of NGOs in our country?
Good evening. See, as a Christian, I really welcome this as a layman, lay Christian, not as a pastor or bishop or anybody, but as a lay Christian, I really welcome what this bill is, because this will get more accountability as well as transparency in the money that is coming into our country. Till date, there is no transparency in whatever we see. We have seen many funds coming in the name of poor people, in the name of the deprived people, but the funds have been used for their personal use. A strict law should be enforced, and I've also written several letters to the Home Minister before also to get a stringent law on this, especially the NRI funds, the foreign funds, which has to be regulated. If it is not regulated, these funds can be misused. It's also been misused. Recently in Bangalore, there is a case where these funds were misused, which was, I think it was caught, it was detected by NIA recently, that is a month ago. What the promotion aspect of this NRI funds. So what I suggest is this should come into force, but milder view also should be taken on how the funds are used. And it should be ensured that the funds should reach the poor and the needy people, for which these funds have been sent from foreign countries.
Let me bring in Mr. Agarwala here as well. Mr. Agarwala, how would you rate this legislation? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it going to impact some of these genuine NGOs as well that have actually worked for social causes?
This will only a problem for those who were not genuinely working for the purpose the contributions have been brought in. Only for genuine NGOs, they will welcome it, because they were also being blacklisted. People were thinking that they are also playing mischief, but actually they were doing the real social work. So I don't feel any genuine person will object to this, because whoever this money will be confiscated, that will be as per procedure. They will be given proper opportunity of being hired. Only then it will their assets brought from this money will be taken by the government.
Basil Mukherjee, in fact, when Marco Rubio came to India, he first headed to Calcutta, if I remember, and he met up with an NGO, and that conversation was also about the FCRA. So I'm very sure, ma'am, there are parties in this country who will object to this legislation. What do you make of such parties? They should go?
No. If they object, that's part of our pluralistic democracy. They have the right for democratic dissent. If they don't wish to understand that this kind of funding is a threat to India's national security interests, then it explains one more time, Vineet, as I have said, and I am writing on it, as to why India got colonized, why Persia did not get colonized, why Afghanistan did not get colonized. Why? Because in India, historically, we have welcomed in foreign invaders, etc., without taking into account national security interests, only taking into account our personal interests. We have betrayed our own people. And now I see in 2026 that this fatal flaw in our DNA is yet to be rectified. So we just have to have this amendment, because sometimes fatal flaws can be rectified through legislation. It is a fatal flaw. We can't see, can we not see the forces surrounding us externally? Can we not understand the kind of deep state politics to bring our government down? Can we not see that those who want the government to come down want a weak coalition government to be yes man against our national security interests? So be it, then we need such laws to make sure that India, that is Bharat, attains Viksit Bharat, its democracy, its pluralism, its right to dissent remains, that India remains India. And I would like to congratulate Advocate Mr. Varghese for putting it in such a patriotic manner. There is no difficulty in religious accommodation or secularism. The problem is when it is abused to bring in conversion by tempting people, join us and your 5 kids will get education, join us, we'll do this and that. It's not just the church. I was brought up by Irish nuns. I probably know the Bible better than the Bhagavad Gita. It's nothing to do with the church or any other religion. We just need to make sure that the rule of law is not violated by sinister external forces in coalition with sinister internal forces. That's what we need to. And as long as I am around and I am there to defend India's national interests, as I've done from the age of 21 and a half when I joined the Indian Foreign Service, I will do so, and I will continue to defend the idea of Bharat, that is India, a state that has survived 5,000 years of invasion, a state that is an example, but a state that was also colonized because Indians were not united. Thank you, Vineet.
Dr. Kohli, in fact, the Delhi riots that happened as well, for which there has been movement in the past few days in terms of punishing the culprit. There were reports that a lot of the funds that were used for creating those disruptions, for the lack of a better word, Dr. Kohli, were a result of funds that were misused and misdriven through the FCRA route?
Absolutely. I mean, the case of misuse of funds has always been there, and that's been the principal reason. And that's where, Ministry of Home Affairs has been strict. But let me answer your question, that is it going to impact the genuine NGOs? Well, the accountability under FCRA is definitely there. You have to keep going back to the government and informing about the usage of funds as to how these funds are being applied. But as I said, the biggest takeaway of this amended regulation would be that confiscation of the assets created out of the NGOs whose licenses, whose registrations have been cancelled, have been suspended. Now, the confiscation starts happening, we can pay attention to this, after the cancellation of the registration, which means if there is a genuine NGO which is putting the money to use for genuine charitable activities, first of all, their license would not be suspended. Their license would not be cancelled. So when the question of cancellation of license comes, there obviously must have been something fishy going on there, that something has come to the cognizance of the government and the authorities that probably the funds are being used for anti-national purposes or not for the purposes for which the NGO is registered. So once the registration is cancelled, then confiscation starts happening. So I think that answers your question very categorically, that genuine NGOs, genuine charitable organizations who are into philanthropic activities in the country will not be impacted. This is meant for the people who have nefarious intentions while inviting the money from abroad. And I can tell you, there are dozens and dozens of sources around the world who are willing to harm the domestic interests, our national interests. They can throw away billions and billions of dollars to make sure that they get something nefarious out of it. So I think this is a step in the right direction. This will give Ministry of Home Affairs the powers to confiscate the assets. And I can tell you, once the law comes, a lot of NGOs who are working with sinister intentions are going to be in trouble for the assets that they have created in the country until now, Vineet.
Valid point, sir. We've run out of time, but I appreciate everybody who joined in and weighed in right before the important legislation is to be taken up in Parliament. We'll take a short break, be right back.